Hi everybody, welcome back to the Intercooler podcast. Dan Prosser here with Andrew Frankel opposite me. Busy show this morning,
What's
Andrew.
going on?
Yeah, magazine style, lots of things we want to discuss. Now, we're recording this the morning after the Belgian Grand Prix, which was, well, a pretty captivating race and then a huge blow up afterwards.
Yeah, it became a captivating. I was sitting there watching it in the early laps thinking, well, okay, but there wasn't a huge amount of overtaking going on, but you could just see it was brewing, couldn't you? And you could
It's bubbling away.
Because at no stage could you actually think, well, that person's won the race. I thought it was Lewis's race from the outset, and then I became increasingly less confident as the race went on. And then at the end of it, I was right.
The curious thing was, so there was some overtaking, but of course, as all the experts knew, as all the pundits were saying, you can overtake at Spa.
Yeah.
But actually, it looked really difficult for a lot of guys.
It did. I mean, that's why Max decided to take the grid drop there, because it's the easiest place. Well, I guess Monza might be easier, but it's one of the easiest places to get past, and that's why he's taking grid drops the last 3 races there, I think.
Yeah.
But it didn't look easy, did it?
No.
And also, did you notice nobody wanted to overtake in that DRS zone going up to La Source, up to turn 1, because if you did, that just meant you would get completely stuffed going down the Kemmel Straight.
Yeah.
So that DRS zone, you could use it to gain ground and make sure that you were behind them, but nobody overtook there. So there was essentially only one DRS zone. And as Piastri was saying, it's very difficult there at very high speeds in those cars to run very close behind another car. So if you're going through Eau Rouge, 100. I mean, I think their apex speed is something like 192.
That's
miles an
unbelievable,
hour.
isn't it?
I mean, it wasn't. I mean, I was watching it in qualifying when it was obviously pretty damp, and they're still going through late 170s, early 180. I mean,
just imagine.
Sake. Anyway, it must be actually quite difficult to follow and get that close. So, I mean, and it is. I think it's not quite the only place that overtaking took place on the circuit, but almost all of them were done there.
Yeah, so it's a cat and mouse game going into La Source, isn't it? And then that run up to over Eau Rouge and to the chicane.
Yeah.
So actually, it was Oscar Piastri who pulled off some of the better moves, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm actually dead impressed with Oscar.
So am I.
I think he's a real talent.
And he's got the right head on his shoulder. It's not just that he's really quick, and he is really quick. He's keeping up with Lando, or more than in the last couple of races. Yeah. And we know how quick he is. But he also just seems to have he seems to have a racer's head on his shoulders. Yeah. He thinks about things. He's not like, Max was a few years ago or in the last race. He's not sort of one of these sort of young hotheads. He's going to go far, isn't he?
He is. It was interesting watching him win the Hungarian Grand Prix. Delighted to see him win. But the celebrations were so muted. And I don't know if that's him or if that's the circumstances. I think he probably felt like it was given to him to some degree, that win.
Well, it was, and we've talked about this. In fact, I've written about it. I mean, it's there are no rights or wrongs for what it's worth, and I think mine is now an increasingly minority opinion. I think that they should have left Lando with the win, just from a team point of view, because I think he's the person who's more likely to deliver them a championship. Yeah. And I think that in the most cutthroat of all motor racing disciplines. I think there is a time once the championship is won for largesse and for going, after you're through. But I think there are other times where you just got to say to your drivers, look, I'm really sorry. It's a bum steer. If we can pay it back, we will. Yeah. But in the meantime, we're doing this for the team. We're doing this for, the Drivers' Championship, which, when people think about, Ayrton Senna winning the championship in 1988, they just think, well, that's McLaren's championship. And even in those seasons where the drivers won the championship, but the constructor hasn't won the constructors, people still think of it as their title. So actually, the constructors does mean more to a constructor than the drivers' championship, but probably not much.
Yeah, we can't go back and name who's won all the constructors, but plenty of people could do that with the drivers.
Yeah, and everybody knows what cars they were in.
Yeah, it's more significant.
Yeah.
This is all an aside, really. We are going to talk a little bit about the Belgian Grand Prix. We are going to talk F1 2024 because it is now the summer break.
Yeah.
But because we're on McLaren, we're talking about Oscar, and he's a great talent. What about Lando? Right, we know he's a fantastic talent, but I'm yet to be impressed by him on lap 1.
Interesting, isn't it?
He's had a few poles, or a couple of poles this season, and front row starts, and he seems to slip back each time.
So there's something he needs to sort out, isn't there? Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, and there comes a stage, doesn't there, when, I still kind of think of people like Lando as being, Formula One newbies.
Yeah.
But he's not.
Sixth season now.
Yeah.
For him and George, yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. Him and George, I always think of them as being the new guys, but they're veterans. So it becomes, if this was Oscar, we'd be saying, oh, well, it's only his, second season, whatever, and, he'll come good. And so, but actually, it becomes less easy to excuse. For what it's worth, I think that Lando is the real deal. And I think that when he irons out the few problems that he has got, I think he could be a multiple world champion. I think he's that level of talent. But you're right, he keeps on, that wheel, what was it? That's near side left tyre that just ever so briefly brushed the gravel at the exit of the source.
Yeah, lap one, yeah.
That cost him the race.
Yeah. It's amazing. Such fine margins.
Such fine margins.
But that's why F1's been good the last few races.
Yeah.
Several races.
Yeah.
It's been so good.
And can we just talk about, well, I mean, we mentioned it earlier, but, Max, I think, given the performance in qualifying, given that we were like 6/10 ahead of anybody else, we just thought it almost doesn't matter where Max qualifies. He's just going to go and win the race. It didn't happen.
No.
And he never really figured, did he?
No. So he got fourth in the end after George was disqualified.
Yeah,
so fifth on the road.
Yeah.
So he made some progress. He overtook his teammate, which is another talking point.
Yeah.
And but that's right. I mean, the last two Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, he started way back and come through to win.
Yeah.
He won from 14th last season.
Yeah, 14th and 10th he's won from as well.
So that's a demonstration of how how things have changed in F1.
Yeah. But he's not on the podium now, and he wasn't on the podium at Hungary. Yeah.
So this is such a compelling story, right? And I've got the championship table here. He won 5 of the first 7 races. He retired from the Australian Grand Prix, the third race, with a brake issue.
Yeah.
So who knows? He may well have won that as well.
He probably would.
Would. And then he was second in Miami.
Yeah.
So he had this spectacular start to the season, and it looked like it was just going to be a repeat of last year.
Yeah.
When he put in the most dominant performance throughout the season that any driver has ever done in F1.
Yeah.
Really extraordinary season last year for him. It looked like we were going to have more of the same. But then since Monaco, when he came 6th, he's won 2 Grand Prix, but the pack has just closed on him. And actually, what's really interesting is since the Canadian Grand Prix, 6 Grand Prix ago, this is when Mercedes came good.
Mm-hmm.
They got their first pole with George. They got their first podium with George.
Yeah.
And since then, I've done the maths and I think I'm right, both Max and Lewis have scored 108 points, more than anyone else. So over the last 6 Grand Prix, which is quarter of the season, so a good chunk, Lewis and Max have been neck and neck. So it's just extraordinary that Max got this massive head start on everyone over the first 7 or 8 races.
I mean, it is actually true, and I never ever thought I would say this, that the championship is up in the air at the moment, isn't it?
It is. And it didn't look like it was going to be after a few races.
No.
But the issue, I suppose, I mean, the constructors is up in the air. But the issue in the drivers is that Max got such a head start, and now there are lots of other guys there competing for wins, taking points off each other.
Exactly right. Yeah,
so
there's so many people. Yeah,
I don't think anyone will catch Max now, unless he has a couple of DNFs.
Can we also talk about? And this makes me really happy. Can we also just talk about Lewis for a minute? I mean, how many times we've said this on the podcast that nobody develops a car through a season like Mercedes does, but that thing they dragged out for the first race. And where it is now, okay, George got disqualified, but a 1-2.
Yeah.
I mean, it is extraordinary. And so Lewis's win at Silverstone.
Yeah.
I think he's got it back. And I thought he had lost it. And I thought, well, because he's going to be 40 any minute now, that this was just part of this very, very slow, gradual, but an inevitable decline.
Yeah, you see, I always felt that if he had a competitive car, he'd be right back up there. But I'm a super fan. I am biased when it comes to Hamilton.
You are completely biased, which I entirely understand. I mean, I'm biased about all sorts of things when it comes to racing. I just think that win at Silverstone, I think that just reignited something within him. And yeah, I mean, watch out. I mean, it was interesting that he couldn't get past George at the end of Spa.
Yeah.
But we're going to obviously go and we're going to come and talk about that, and whether that was just George's racecraft, or Lewis didn't have the speed, or maybe it was because George had an unfair advantage, which was disclosed after the. I mean, who knows? But even so, I think that it makes me so happy to see Lewis, dominating again.
He's back.
Yeah.
He is back, and I just hope that throughout the remainder of the season, both Mercedes are in the fight with the Red Bulls, with the Ferraris and the McLaren. I just want to see a ding-dong battle for the rest of the year. And
he must be feeling a bit sick about leaving Mercedes now, don't you think?
Well, the trouble is he was offered a 1+1.
Yeah.
So there's no guarantee he was going to have a seat for 26.
No, well, exactly.
Which is extraordinary.
Yeah, well, except from the Mercedes point of view, they are, it's what happened with Schumacher at Ferrari, isn't it?
But I don't think Lewis could stay, particularly with the Ferrari offer on the table.
Yeah,
it would have been a huge gamble. So I don't think I think he'll be sorry to be leaving because that car is now looking good, the Mercedes. But I don't think he can reflect on a poor decision because I think he was sort of
it wasn't
forced.
really he was bounced into it, wasn't he?
Yeah. So, I mean, Lewis's start to the season was miserable. 7th, 9th, retire. 9th, 9th, 6th, 7th. Just hopeless.
It's nuts. I mean, compared to now.
Yeah, and since the Canadian Grand Prix, he's scored more points than anyone else, equal to Max. So that is something. I was at the British Grand Prix. I was in the Beckett's grandstand.
That must have been mega to watch.
Well, first of all, I think that's one of the best places to watch a Grand Prix.
Yeah. Because
you've got the Maggots-Beckett sequence, which is fantastic. But you also see, because the Silverstone sort of pinches in the middle.
It does. So you can see him coming back after turn one.
You see the loop as well.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of track.
Yeah.
Great atmosphere.
Yeah.
The British guys all got a huge reception, but Lewis more than any of them actually.
Yeah.
Which is fair enough. He's won that race now 9 times, isn't he? He is the golden boy there.
Well, he's the golden boy full stop, isn't he?
He is,
He's statistically the most successful racing driver there's ever been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was such an honour to be there, and it almost felt sort of dreamlike, having him not having won since the end of 2021, 2.5 years, to then be there thinking, my God, he's going to win this thing.
Yeah.
And to actually be there for that occasion was amazing. And one of the funniest parts about the whole race, actually, for us, in that grandstand, there's a big cover, huge cover over the huge roof over the grandstand. And the weather was bright and sunny, but we could see this dark cloud coming towards us.
Yeah.
And so it hit the other side of the circuit first.
Okay.
And then it clearly came over us. But because of that big cover, we didn't feel it. And so it took all of us a while to realise it was raining. And we all just saw sort of, a car have a big slide or someone go off.
Yeah.
We're like, what on earth is going on? And then we twigged, oh, it's raining. It was really bizarre. So that was the best live F1 experience I've ever had.
That's great.
It was fantastic. And yeah, so it's a weird season, isn't it? But I wonder what on earth has happened to Red Bull. I mean, so dominant last year, really dominant at the start of this year, but the others just seem to have closed right up.
I mean, I think we mentioned it on a previous podcast. I sat down with Mark Webber at the Festival of Speed, and he just said that they've taken their eye off the ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
With all the stuff that's going on, all the shenanigans.
Wow.
But also, where they're so vulnerable in the constructors is they've only got one person contributing the points.
Yep. Yep.
And if he's not winning, I mean, you look at Lewis and George, look at Charles and Carlos, look at Lando and Oscar, drivers who every weekend can be pretty much guaranteed to deliver a sackload of points to the team. Yeah.
And even, so Checo's had some awful qualifyings recently.
Yeah.
Out in Q1 into the tyre barriers. Yeah. But this time he put it on the front row.
Yeah. And still got overtaken by his teammate starting in 11th.
How did that happen?
And he came P8 and then, promoted to 7, I think. Yeah.
Marco said it totally collapsed.
Absolutely collapsed.
Oh, when you're fighting for your seat.
And also, it's really difficult to make excuses because it's, you're at a track like Spa, where a car like a Red Bull should just be absolutely in its prime. There was no weather. I'm not aware of any massive strategic errors that were made. He just went off the boil. He just, and I suspect that because the competition is so hot up the front, and this is something which I suspect we haven't really focused on enough, is just the overall standard of talent, just how close. All those drivers I just mentioned, the Ferrari drivers, the McLaren drivers, the Red Bull drivers, the Mercedes drivers. You've got 8 drivers, or 7 actually, because you can't include Checo, sadly. 7 drivers who are, I think, in terms of raw pace, within half a tenth of each other over a lap.
Yeah.
So if you are, 2/10 off, which ain't much, you're nowhere.
Yeah, you're nowhere.
And that's how you convert 2nd to 7th.
That's right. The field is so tightly packed now.
I don't think there's ever been a richer seam of talent at the top of Formula One.
I think that's probably
right
true.
Now.
I think that's true.
And I don't think that we necessarily... It's one of those things that, a few years from now, when that's not the case anymore, we'll look back and we'll go, God, that was good, wasn't it? Because, that was like sort of, yeah, you were born. Sorry. But the sort of, the Piquet, Prost, Senna, Mansell era. There's that famous photograph of them.
Yes, sitting on a wall.
All sitting on a wall.
Yeah.
And a year later, you couldn't have got that photograph again for a bazillion quid because they all hated each other by then. But it's that sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway,
that's right. And so Checo, who knows? He might be replaced. It does seem likely.
I'd replace him.
I would. He scored less than half the points of his teammate.
I think Lawson deserves the drive.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Wow. You'd go straight for Lawson.
I would.
Not Danny Rick, not Tsunoda.
No, absolutely not. No. No, promote the youth.
I agree. It would be fantastic to see.
And also, he did that one race. I can't remember what he did, but he was really good in it.
Yeah, he was. Well, he did a few last year, but he also, Singapore, he out-qualified Max. He had a great race.
You can't see Checo doing that, can you?
No. I'd put that... no. It would be great to see Liam. I think they're going to put Danny Rick in the car for the rest of the season at least. I know. But, who knows? Maybe he will get in that mix.
Do you think that's a Max decision?
Why?
Well, because, I think Max would be pretty confident he'd have Danny Rick covered.
Yeah, probably would.
But, if Lawson is coming on strong, gets a touch of the Piastris about him, maybe Max can do without that distraction.
Do you know what? If this season got started... actually, our mate Karun Chandok sent something, didn't he? Let me see if I can dig that out. He sent... the championship standings
after 8 rounds.
If it was just the last 8 rounds.
Yeah.
Verstappen would have 141 points. So a bit of a lead over Piastri with 126.
Yeah.
Hamilton 123. Norris 116. So this is the last 8 races. So tight.
Super close.
Really tight.
He didn't send one for the constructors too, did he?
No.
Because I'll tell you what, well, Red Bull
would be nowhere.
Wouldn't be leading it. Wouldn't be anywhere near it, would it?
Absolutely.
It would be McLaren and Mercedes and then Ferrari.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Red Bull, don't know. But yeah, certainly it'd be McLaren and Mercedes.
So it's you're talking purely from a spectator's point of view, wanting to see a great championship fight. It's just a shame that the season started off the way last year ended.
Yeah.
Because without those first few races, this would be a humdinger of a season. It would be unbelievable.
But F1 is interesting again now because you go to any Grand Prix. So the next one is in Zandvoort in a few weeks' time. I haven't got the clue who's going to win it. I mean,
I think I do.
Well, you think it's going to be Max because the entire circuit is going to be, full of Max fans, isn't it? But
who knows?
But you just don't know, do you?
No.
And how different is? I mean, if you'd said that to me at the start of this season, well, no, after the first 6 races, but by mid-season, you're not going to have a clue. It's going to be any one of 7 drivers can win any given race. I've just laughed.
We have already spoken about Lando. Has he blown too many chances this year to win races?
Absolutely, he has, and the team have.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be one of those terrible sort of what ifs, and you can't think like that because it doesn't do any good. But yeah, I mean, they could be in so much better position than they are because I think. Well, no, I'm very confident they've now got the quickest car.
Yeah,
and I think they've probably got in both their drivers. Do they now have the strongest driver lineup? I mean, it's okay. I'd put them above the Ferrari. I mean, what do I know? But I put them above the Ferrari lineup,
above the Red Bull,
certainly above the Red Bull. So I think it's only George and Lewis who.
I think it's probably George and Lewis, but I'd put the McLaren boys second, very close second. So,
world leading authorities on the subject. That we are very experienced Formula One racing drivers. That we are. We know exactly what we're talking about.
So, Belgian Grand Prix yesterday. Yeah, I mean,
come on, let's talk about George.
So we'll get to that, but it's worth noting that of all the 2 stoppers, Lewis and the Mercedes, they won that race on merit.
Completely.
apart from George, and which is really interesting. You wouldn't have said that, would you, before the start of the race?
No.
Fairly standard two-stopper. Who's going to come out on top?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have said Lewis.
No. Okay, couple of slight moderating factors. I mean, Oscar was close as you like.
Yeah, he was.
If there'd been another couple of laps,
He might have got him.
Yeah, he might have got him. And also, Lando blew it at the start, and that completely compromised his entire race.
That's amazing.
Because as we said earlier, for some bizarre reason, it actually wasn't that easy to get past at Spa this year.
Yeah.
So I remain to be convinced that the Mercedes is the quickest car out there, even at Spa. I think on pure pace over a race distance, the McLarens would have been quicker, but Mercedes at least appeared to have done the perfect execution of that race.
And
turned
then
out not entirely to be the case.
And then from out of nowhere, such a curveball,
so sorry for
such an outlier strategy. George Russell, and he called it from the cabin, didn't he?
He did.
He said, "Let's one stop this."
Yeah.
To be fair, when you're running around in fifth, you have so little to lose that you might as well go for the risky out there strategy.
Yeah, but I also think that if you're a smart guy, which George is,
Yeah.
and you've been on those tyres for a bit, and you know how they're performing, and you can feel the drop off. He got. I mean, and I think it was Martin Brundle who made the very good point that this wasn't like sort of last weekend, where a strategy call would have determined the outcome of the race had Lando not given the pace back up again. This was George's call. He decided to do it. And it's not like he was given priority over Lewis or anything else like that. So, that win, apart from the small matter of 1.5 kilos, was absolutely on merit.
Yeah.
And I think he drove the back end of that race, I mean, certainly as well as I've ever seen him drive.
Well, I think too many times in the last sort of year and a half, we've seen critical, little but costly errors from George.
Yeah.
He's done it a few times. And I said to you a few weeks ago on this podcast, we need to see Norris and George now step up and prove that they can consistently perform at that level without making the little mistakes that cost them. George did that yesterday.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Huge credit to George.
I mean, I can remember in Lewis's last championship season, 2020. Was it 20? Yeah.
Yeah.
I can remember. Were we doing this podcast then? We probably were, weren't we?
We started March 2020, yeah.
Yeah, so I think I said on that on a podcast that year that I couldn't remember of a single mistake in any session, be it practice, qualifying, or race for the entire season. I couldn't remember Lewis making a mistake.
And that is the level that you need to get to.
Certainly, if you're going to do if you want to win triple-digit numbers of Grand Prix, absolutely you do.
George did it yesterday. So we know that he got disqualified. Car was underweight.
Yeah.
1.5 kilograms.
It's a lot.
It's something, isn't it?
Not nothing. It's absolutely not. 1.5 kilograms over, to carry that much less weight than you're allowed over the duration of a race.
Yeah.
That's actually quite a lot of time.
It's probably a few seconds of race time.
It's certainly more seconds than that which separated him from Lewis at the finish.
What we don't know, Mercedes said after the race they think it was down to tyre wear. I think they'll analyse it. Of course, they'll analyse it properly. They might even tell us because they're quite open about these things.
Yeah.
So they might come out in the next couple of days and tell us what exactly the reason was. But whatever, I mean, there is some advantage to be had from being slightly underweight. So was it enough to make the difference between Lewis and George winning? We don't know. I think unlikely, but we don't know.
But it was... I felt so sorry for him because it couldn't have had less to do with him. But it was the perfect storm. You have the one-stop strategy, which then, so you lose the weight on the tyres. Christian Horner said that he thought the 1.5 kilos on the tyres was entirely believable.
Did he?
Yeah. You don't have a slowing down lap.
Yeah.
So you can't go around, which is entirely legal, and everybody does it, picking up chunks of rubber. And those tyres by the end of those races are boiling. You wouldn't want, there's basically molten rubber, so you'll pick up everything you can run over. Whether you could pick up 1.5 kilos, I don't know. I haven't seen it stick. But also, the other thing was, a race without safety cars. At Spa, pretty rare event, and everybody would have bet on there being something so that a fuel there. So it was for George. It was the perfect storm, and if any one of those three factors hadn't been in play, then possibly he would have been allowed to keep the win. My question to you: you know how sophisticated those cars are. You know how much telemetry they carry. People in the pits know everything, don't they?
Yeah.
So why didn't they know? Or did they know? I mean, how could you not know that your car is going to finish the race underweight because when they weighed it at the end, it weighed. I think the limit is 798 kilos.
Yep.
And that's what the car weighed.
Yep.
But then you take the fuel out.
Yep.
And he had 2.8 litres of fuel left in the car, and that was the whatever it was. They can't have not known that, can they? With you think of the hundreds of people back at base. You think of all those people crowded around all those computers.
Someone's monitoring
all that information, all that data. Would there not just be a little red flashing light on the corner of some computer going, watch it, guys. You might need to tell him to calm down a bit because otherwise he's... But if that had happened, he wouldn't have run the race. So maybe they did know and thought that somehow they might, I don't know.
Get away with it.
Well, no, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't because they could. Well, no, because who knows? But I do find it amazing that with the sophistication that is available in Formula One now, with a team as well drilled as Mercedes appears to be, I find it amazing that mistake could be made.
Yeah, it is a cock-up. But Toto Wolff was very stony-faced as his two guys crossed the line.
He was.
Past the checkered flag.
Yes.
So did he know?
He wasn't he? He wasn't euphoric at all.
No.
It's a very good point.
Who knows?
Any conspiracy theorists of you out there?
I do wonder. We know they were lifting and coasting because there was no safety car. So they were all going to be pretty marginal on fuel. Perhaps George didn't do it enough or wasn't told to do it enough. And that's...
The more I think about it, your point about Toto's. I can remember sitting there. I didn't connect to it at the time, thinking he's not looking anything like as happy as given how long those guys have been in the wilderness. He wasn't looking that happy, was he?
I wonder if. Well, who knows? Who knows? But anyway, we don't know if there was a performance advantage to George running.
# did Toto know?
Right. I mean, I think there probably was a minor one, but we don't know if it was enough to make the difference. But whatever. I suppose the encouraging thing is that Mercedes really are back in the hunt now, back in the fight.
I mean, you said 1.5 kilos. I don't call that mine. I mean, given that he would have been disqualified for being a gram under.
Yeah, quite rightly. That's the rules.
The rules are the rules, and you can't sort of say, oh well, it's all right, because because then next time that happens, someone will push it a bit harder. So the rules. If he'd been a gram under, he would have been disqualified. Yeah. He was 1,500 grams under, so it was an absolute slam dunk. So and didn't you have some?
I read on the F1 website, and it sounds too sort of neat to be exactly true, but it said that 1 kilogram is worth 1/10 of a second a lap. So 1.5 kilograms is worth 0.15 seconds a lap.
And great mathematician that you are, you can tell me what that times 44 is.
I think it's about 6 seconds, 6.6 seconds. But it's a long lap.
Yeah.
So maybe it's sort of 8 seconds or something. But he wasn't... it gets complicated because was he underweight by that much for the whole race? Probably not if it was down to tyre wear, which comes off gradually.
Yeah. So, yeah. But the point is, I think you could certainly credibly speculate that he might not have even come second.
Yeah, you can.
I mean, I don't think he would have, because the next pack down, the Max pack with Lando, was
a bit further back.
Was a bit further, Charles was a bit further back. But who knows? This is pointless speculation, but entertaining, I hope.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a good race though, and it's just turning into a firecracker season.
Yeah.
Since around Miami, something like that, it's just been spectacular to watch. I've loved it. And Tiff Needell keeps making this point on Twitter. Let's just keep these regs for a few more years. They're working now. Yeah. They're doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And we've got them for one more season, then we're
wiping
the slate clean.
All the balls up in the air. Someone will have figured out something that someone else didn't, and you'll get another Mercedes domination or Red Bull domination, and we'll all be going.
Anyway, well, Formula One is back in 3 weeks, isn't it, at Zandvoort?
Yeah.
So bring it on. I can't wait. Right, we're moving on to rallying.
Oh, gosh. Yes, a subject close to my heart.
Yes, indeed.
About which I know precisely nothing.
No, that's not true. So our friends at PistonHeads have got 3 very interesting looking long distance rally cars, so sort of classic historic rally cars up for sale at the moment. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about long distance rallying.
Okay, if there was a form of rallying I would love to do a proper long distance rally.
Because to a certain generation, that is what rallying is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I now think of the World Rally Championship, and they're sprint events. They're pure speed events. There's really no endurance element at all.
Yeah.
But it used to be, this is one of the famous ones, the 1968 London to Sydney Marathon.
Yeah.
It was a rally, and this is what rallies used to be like. That started in Crystal Palace in London on the 24th of November, 1968, and ended 3 weeks later in Sydney on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
So the 98 crews, they drove through Central Europe, into Turkey, into the Middle East, Pakistan, India, and then they got on a ferry across the Indian Ocean to Perth.
Yeah, and then across Australia.
Then they drove across Australia.
Fair play.
The total road route was around 10,000 miles, and then of course they did more on the boat as well. The ferry trip was a 9-day voyage, and this was just an epic event.
I bet all the drivers flew and then just sort of whooped it up in Perth for a week.
That's what you'd want to do, wasn't
Absolutely.
it? Absolutely. But these events used to bring in the big names. Roger Clark would do these things, and the top teams as well.
Yeah.
So events like this do exist now, but they're sort of charity things or sort of amateur adventure things.
Yeah, but I mean, so I know a couple of people who have just got back from doing Peking Paris.
Yeah.
And that's the name of the rally. Obviously, I know that Peking is no longer called Peking anymore, but because of the original... Beijing, yeah. But because of the original 1907 Peking Paris rally, that's what it's still known as to this day. And I know another couple of people who have done it in the past. That's no holiday.
God, it does sound like a great adventure.
Is massive distances every single day. It's tents in the middle of, some of the most vast wildernesses on Earth. And I think each day you basically get because there aren't roads in a lot of these places that they're going. So you get a bearing. And I don't think, I may be wrong. I think it's one of those things where I think you've got GPS, but if you use it, you're disqualified. Or you use it, I can't remember what it is. But anyway, it's proper navigation. It's proper driving. It's really fast. And I would love to do something like that.
You had
38 days, I think.
It does sound epic, doesn't it? You'd remember it for life.
Yeah.
It would be one of the best things you did in a car, no question.
Oh, absolutely.
You had to go in one of these sorts of cars, didn't you?
Yeah, I'd go in. So Prodrive, with the guys at Hero, the historic endurance rally organisation.
Yeah.
The boss of Hero asked Dave Richards, I think his wife wanted to do something like that anyway, and they had a conversation. And then, Prodrive made a Mustang. A 1960, what would it be, 1967 Mustang, something like that, to long distance rally specification.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's just been, it's just completed the Peking Paris, that car has. But before it got on the boat to go out there, I had a go at it on a sort of gravel stage at Bicester Heritage. And traditionally, with all these historic rallies, the 911s have been the thing to have. Particularly sort of, Tut Hill prepared 911s. And a Mustang, you think, well, it's big and it's heavy and, it's not going to have 911 type traction. But in fact, for really, really long distance rallying, what do I want a car to be? I want it to be strong.
Yeah, tough.
Comfortable and safe. Yeah? Easy to drive.
Yeah.
And it was such a hoot.
I bet it was.
It was such a hoot.
What a machine.
Yeah, it hasn't got huge power because it's got to run on whatever fuel they find in the middle of Mongolia or wherever they are. And you don't want really peaky race engines. So it's a small block Ford engine similar to that in which I've raced the Spa 6 Hours, but instead of having 470 horsepower, which is what you tend to get with those sort of race cars, it's got about, I can't remember, between 300 and 350.
Oh, really? God, it's wound down then, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's just solid torque from 2,000 RPM.
Yeah.
Huge amounts of torque, which means, unlimited skidding opportunities. And it's just really easy to drive. And it's really comfortable. I just had a ball on it. Yeah.
It does sound like a brilliant form of motorsport. I remember having a bit of a look at it last year and just thinking, for me now, given the choice, I'd do a sprint event because I like the idea of the speed. Yeah. But I can well imagine a time where actually I just want to...
When you get to my immense age.
Something that lasts for weeks, not days.
Yeah.
where you see epic scenery, and you have a real adventure and a challenge.
Yeah,
It's
all of that.
I totally get it.
It is absolutely all of that. Yeah, and people get themselves into all sorts of trouble. I don't think I've ever lost anyone on any of these things, but people have wandered off into the middle of nowhere and had to, call for backup. And it's very. I mean, anybody who thinks it's just a sort of, chaperone parade from one place to it is absolutely not that. No. It's really, really full on hardcore.
Pretty serious.
I mean, you will get stuck. You will have mechanical problems. You will have to sort itself out, sort the car out, fix the car in the middle of absolutely nowhere.
It's cracking, isn't it? So right now, PistonHeads have got 3 such cars on its auction platform. Those auctions are live right now. They come to an end on Wednesday. Now, I mentioned the 1968 London to Sydney Marathon. One of these cars is a little Morris 1800 called the Land Crab, because of the way it looks. And it finished second on that event, the 68 London to Sydney.
This actual car?
Yeah, driven by Paddy Hopkirk.
Oh, well, there you go.
So it's a significant car, really interesting car. That's up for sale on the PistonHeads auction platform right now, along with 2 other cars from the same collection. These are both replicas. One's a Ford Cortina, another a Triumph, replicas of cars that competed on either the same event or similar events at around the same time. So clearly,
it's Ford Cortina, it's not a Lotus Cortina.
Ford Cortina,
yeah.
It says, yeah. So clearly the person selling these cars has a real thing for that kind of rallying from that kind of era. But they're fantastic looking cars, and if this kind of rallying is your thing, you really should go and have a look at these auctions that are live right now until Wednesday. So head to pistonheads.com/TI, and you'll see all the listings there, and you'll find these 3 historic rally cars. And while we're talking about it, if you're thinking of selling your car, go and have a look at PistonHeads auction platform, pistonheads.com/TI. And if you're looking to buy, go do the same thing. See what they've got on the platform right now. Now, finally, we are going to be doing a bit of work with PistonHeads in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
We're going to be at Bicester Heritage.
We are. August the 10th?
August the 10th, a Saturday. PistonHeads annual service. I'm expecting it to be like a Sunday scramble, but on a Saturday.
Saturday scramble.
Saturday scramble. Because there are several thousand people going. Tickets are still available. They're mostly sold out. Several thousand people are going to be there, lots of exhibitors.
It'll be really interesting to see whether the sort of the dynamic is different, whether the demographic is different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we're teaming up with our friends at Gerardo and Co.
Yes.
So they've got a race transporter booked, or a truck really, with space for 4 or 5 cars. So in the next week or so, we're going to have a word with them and agree which cars they're going to bring along. But, I mean, however they fill that truck, it's going to be pretty spectacular.
They will be cool cars.
They will be excellent cars. So if you're going, make sure you come and find us and come and have a look at what Gerardo have got on display with us. And we're going to be on stage talking to Max Gerardo about his career selling the world's most valuable cars.
And also, the state of the market and what it takes to be in that world successfully.
Yeah, there's a whole lot to get.
You would know.
Plenty to discuss. And you can get 10% off your tickets if you want using the code TI10. I'll put a link in the description so you can go and buy tickets. You can also just search 2024 PistonHeads annual service. You'll find it and use the discount code TI10 to get 10% off.
Look forward to seeing you there.
Indeed. So the last thing I want to talk about this week, Andrew, is a story that you wrote for us a couple of weeks ago, last week, and it's on the Intercooler app and website right now.
Oh, okay.
Ferrari's 1971 model lineup.
Yes, another thing that we were able to do thanks to our channels at Gerardo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had the whole model lineup from 1971 in the showroom.
But if they come to us and they say, we got the entire model lineup from, 1987.
So what?
We wouldn't have been having this conversation. Yeah.
So it's significant for a reason, isn't it?
And in fact, so the reason we even found out about it was because some of you may know that my father bought a Dino new in whenever they were new. And Gerardo sold it, but then it came back in. And so someone just contacted me and said, your dad's car back in, it's sitting there, and it's got there. And I suddenly saw these other Ferraris, and I thought, well, hang on a second. That's it. And the point is that to me, and to, I think, Ferrari fans of a certain age, and I know that not everybody agrees with this, but to me that was peak Ferrari. I think there have been two possible other peaks since. One was sort of in the mid-1990s when you had the 456 and the 355 and the 550 Maranello.
Yep.
Not bad. And the other one's probably now.
No,
with the 812 and with the Roma and with the 296. But I guess we are products of our childhoods, aren't we? And those three cars, the 365 GTB4 Daytona, it's 2+2, massively underrated, beautiful Sablemate, the GTC4, and of course the Dino. I think that they are three of the most beautiful Ferraris of any era. And actually, I don't really want to talk about my thoughts of them because you've never driven any of those sorts of cars before.
No.
And you were able to go and have a proper go and all that. And so I'm much more interested in what you thought relative to your expectations. What a 50-year-old Ferrari or 3 50-year-old Ferraris were like to drive.
Do you know what? I was just thinking about it. Because of our friends at Gerardo, I've driven so many special cars over the last couple of years for the first time. And 3 amazing Ferraris.
I can remember you were completely blown away by that 550 Maranello.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
That really is a bit of me, that 550 Maranello. I adored it. And so these much older cars, 50 years old, I don't drive many cars of that sort of age.
No.
I know you do. I really don't. But I mean, it's not as though it's a different skill driving a Ferrari from that era.
No.
You still drive it like you drive a modern car.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's not like something from the 50s where it's very tricky, the gear shift or weird pedal placements or whatever. Sure. So you can just jump in and drive.
Yeah.
And I just thought they were wonderful. I mean, that... you're going to have to remind me, the GTC4?
Yes.
The 2+2?
Yes.
Gorgeous thing. It looks wonderful, doesn't it? But that is a consummate Grand Tourer. You get in it. It's got power steering, so light steering.
Self-leveling rear suspension.
Amazing ride comfort.
Yeah. Those really tall-walled Michelin tyres.
Yeah. Honking great V12, so it just gets up and goes. I thought it was gorgeous. And then immediately the Daytona is a more serious kind of car.
Yeah.
More sporting car. Yeah. Heavier steering.
Yeah.
Even the seating position, you're properly reclined in it.
Yeah.
With the gear shift right up here.
Yeah.
Just fantastic seating position. So evocative. And it really honks along when you wind that V12 out. Just brilliant.
I mean, you think well, 352 horsepower. I mean, that's nothing these days, is it? But actually, if you think about how light those cars were compared to modern things, and how much torque they have, I mean, even by today's standards, a Daytona still feels quite quick, doesn't it?
Yeah. It was plenty quick enough. You're not thinking, if only I had another 100 horsepower. No chance.
Particularly when you're on skinny tyres with tiny discs. And,
The thing, and the Dino was just gorgeous. That little V6 is wonderful, isn't it? It really revs beautifully.
Yeah, racing engine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just fantastic. And it's such a honey to drive that car. Again, good ride. Loved it. The thing about these cars for me is I would have to spend quite a lot of time at their wheel to get on top of them like I can a modern car.
Yeah.
I can jump in a modern 911 or whatever and drive it pretty hard and feel confident in it and know I'm using basically all the grip.
Yeah.
In those cars, I really have to build up to it over time.
Yeah. But what you would discover is that they're actually much easier than modern cars. Because, for lots of reasons. One, they're all much lighter.
Yeah.
So there's less momentum. They've got much more feel because they're largely unassisted. There's much less grip, so it's much easier to find the limit. And when they slide, they do so progressively.
That's the bit I'm looking forward to getting to and just playing with it.
So actually, I think you would find the learning curve was much shorter and steeper than you might imagine it would be. And that you would feel very at home in those cars. Yeah. The only thing you need to bear in mind is, they don't have unlimited grip, so you can't just stamp on them. I mean, there's no ABS. You can't just stamp it. You have to be quite mechanically sympathetic with them. But if you are, they're really easy. They're really, really easy.
I'd love to experience that for myself. The issue for me is, taking the Daytona as an example, I want to get it out on some open roads that I know well, where there's
Yeah.
plenty of space and
Yeah.
tight flowing corners, so you can start to really get on top of it.
Yeah.
The roads around Gerardo are sort of Oxfordshire, sort of back roads.
Yeah.
They're fine for what we're doing. I'd love to get them on a mountain road in
Yeah.
Wales.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
The other thing is, I'm just thinking about the value of the thing,
Mhm.
and I don't want to break it.
Yeah.
I really, really don't want to break it.
Yeah.
And so actually job one is just to give it back in one piece.
Yeah, I mean that Daytona, which was an early car with the famous plexiglass nose, which I think less than a third of them had it.
Yeah.
It's about £800,000. It's a lot of money, isn't it? It's a lot of money.
Significantly more than my house.
Yeah, well, but it reflects the fact that it's a rare car.
Yeah.
It also reflects the fact that it's completely unrestored. It's in completely
Yeah.
original condition.
Yeah.
So yeah, but 3 very, very special cars.
Yeah.
Please don't go and buy my father's Dino. I'm still trying to cobble together to do it myself. It may take me a while.
Yeah. If you haven't subscribed to the Intercooler yet, now you
please,
have good
please
reason
do,
to.
because then you can help me buy my dad's Dino back.
But they were just 3 fantastic cars.
Yeah.
Such a privilege to get to drive them. And you make a very strong case for that being peak Ferrari. And I agree with you. It's either...
It's just an opinion, isn't it?
It is. But it's either, as you say, the 90s with the 550, 456 and 355.
Correct.
I've only driven the 550, but everything I read about, certainly the 355.
An early 355.
Do
Pre-airbag, old engine management.
Yeah.
Because the later ones are actually, they don't feel very quick. And they're not nice to drive, but an earlier 355 coupe is mustard.
Or today, the sort of current lineup, we don't know what the new... Are we saying 12 cylindry? The 812 replacement. We don't know what that's like yet.
No.
But we're
going to find out
We're going to find out soon. But I really like that 90s era. And the engineer's name has fallen out of my head, but you're going to remind me.
Which one?
The who I spoke to recently for my 550 story.
Franco Cimatti.
Franco Cimatti, yes, thank you. Franco Cimatti. Great guy.
Great guy.
And he was one of the sort of handful of engineers at Ferrari at that time who got hold of it under De Montezemolo.
Yeah,
just said, we're not going to build cars like the 348 anymore.
No.
We're going to build good cars.
Yeah. I mean, in a period of about 3 years, they turned their model range from unquestionably, if you think about, what do they have? They had the Testarossa, the Mondial, and the 348.
Yeah.
Into the 550 Maranello, the 355, and the 456. I mean, wow.
Wow. Yeah, that's some turnaround, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, there we go, Ferraris. Yes, I'd like to own a 550 or a 355.
I'd be very happy with a little 246 myself.
I'm sure. So that story, Ferrari 1971, is live on the Appen website now if you want to go and check it out.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we'll wrap this one up here, but thank you ever so much for listening or watching if you're doing that on YouTube. And if you are, please subscribe to the channel, give this video the thumbs up. If you're just listening, please remember to follow the show on whichever app you're using. And I say this every week because it really, really does help us. It makes a huge difference. If you just think I'm doing it, I don't know, to fill time or somehow to end the show, whatever. I'm not. It really makes a difference. It helps new people find the show. So please do it.
Yeah.
And in return, we'll be back next week when we're talking about our favourite limited edition, special edition Porsche 911s.
Yeah, I challenge the use of the word favourite because I don't like some of them. We're going to be talking about them. The most interesting, and we're not talking GT3s and GT3 RSs.
No.
One or two of those may pop in, but these are cars that were built in very small numbers for very specific reasons. And we're going to go, well, we'll start right at the beginning in 1954, but most of them will be more recent than that, or a lot more recent than that.
Because we have been knocking about in the latest ones.
Yeah.
The 911 ST and the 911 Dakar.
We have.
That story will be live very soon. The video is to come. So plenty of good stuff coming to the Appen website. So stay tuned and thank you very much.
Thank you.